Whether it's a small dinner or a big holiday gathering, you really can't go wrong with apple pie. Now this one has a crumb topping and it's drizzled with caramel sauce at the end, so it pretty much takes apple pie to a new level. Now I'm making the crust for the pie. I started with 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I used a 1.5 cup measure. They're so handy. And I'll add a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, and then a teaspoon of salt. This is the pie crust recipe that my friend Sylvia shared with me years and years ago. I added the spices just to give the apple pie a little bit of an edge. I got all that stirred around. Now I'll add 3/4 of a cup of cold shortening. I just cut it into squares. And then the same amount of cold butter. Now I'll just use a pastry cutter to slowly combine the dry ingredients with the shortening and butter. I've tried to do it in the food processor, but the pie crust never turns out as flaky and perfect as if you do it by hand. I got it all mixed together. I got most of the big chunks of shortening and butter broken up. So now I'll add a beaten egg. I didn't overbeat it, I just barely stirred it around with a fork. Now I have a little container of ice water, and I'll just add about 5 tablespoons right over the top. Whenever you're making pie crust, it's important for the ingredients to stay really, really cold. Otherwise, everything falls apart. Now finally, a tablespoon of vinegar. The acid in the vinegar just helps the pie crust stay extra tender. Now I'll just stir it around with a spoon until it just comes together. Again, you do not want to overmix pie crust. It is a very delicate being. Now I'll just break the dough in half, and then I'll put each helping into its own plastic bag. I'll just form it into a rough ball. And then after I stick it in the bag, I just flatten it slightly, and that'll make it easier to roll out later. Okay, I'll get the second one in. This pie crust is so good without the spices, but it's particularly delicious with. All right, now I'm gonna stick the pie crust into the freezer. This crust is for a future pie, and this one just needs to chill for about 20 minutes. So when the time's up, all I have to do is get the dough out of the bag and onto a floured surface and start rolling. I begin at the center and work my way out. I just keep going until it's slightly larger than the pie pan. Then I roll it around the rolling pin, lift it onto the pie pan, carefully unroll it, and press it in. Then I tear off the excess dough and tuck the edge under neatly and go around pinching the dough to crimp it. I've just been slicing a bunch of peeled apples. I've got about 6 to 7 cups of apple slices in the bowl. And now I'll add 1/2 cup of sugar. And then to make it a little bit thicker, I'll add 1/4 cup of flour. To combat all that sweetness, it needs a little salt, about 1/4 teaspoon. And then I'll slice a lemon in half, and I'll just squeeze in the juice of half of it. The lemon juice just gives it a little bit of acidy tartness, adds a little liquid to the mix. All right, now I'll just stir it around. I am glad my husband and kids are nowhere to be found while I'm making this, because usually I get as far as making the apple mixture and they start coming in, picking out little slices. They really, really are addictive. That is all combined. Now I'll just bring up the beautiful crust, and I'll just pile the apples right in the crust. And when I say pile, I mean pile. I don't believe in having a level apple pie. Okay, just perfect. Now there are many delicious things about this apple pie, and this crumb topping is one of them. It's butter and flour cut together with some brown sugar, quick oats, which give fabulous texture, and a little salt, all stirred together. Okay, now the crumb topping just gets sprinkled all over the pie. Use my hands. If some of it falls onto the floor, no problem. There's plenty more where that came from. Big pile. Now I'll just use my hands to let it fall into the cracks. Oh my gosh, look at that. Gorgeous. Now the pie goes into a 375-degree oven for about an hour. Then there's another thing to add to the topping before it finishes baking. Half a cup of chopped pecans. Delicious. Okay, back in for 5 more minutes. Well, my house smells heavenly, and that means the pie is ready to come out of the oven. It just looks amazing. Oh, nice and golden, those crunchy nuts on top. The crust looks gorgeous. Now to finish it off and to make it caramel apple pie, I'll just crack open a jar of caramel sauce and I'll just drizzle it all over the pie. My gosh, that looks so good. Oh, well, there you go, caramel apple pie. I promise you, anyone you serve it to is gonna go crazy for it.
My salted caramel sundaes, and I'm starting with 8 ounces of bittersweet chocolate. So I'm gonna take a cup of heavy cream and put it in a bowl, set over a pan of simmering water. You don't want the water to touch the bottom of the bowl or the chocolate could burn. 8 ounces of chocolate, right in. I want this to be really chocolatey. Next is 2 teaspoons of corn syrup. I only use light corn syrup here. 1 teaspoon of coffee granules, instant coffee granules, or espresso, whatever you have. Okay, so I'm just gonna stir this and let this chocolate melt. It is gonna make the most delicious chocolate sauce. Are you ready for a serious sundae? I'll show you how I assemble this. So first the chocolate sauce, big puddle in the bottom. Then I've got a small scoop, and I'm gonna do 3 small scoops of salted caramel ice cream. You can find all different kinds of brands in the store. Just pick your favorite. 3 scoops. Caramel popcorn, homemade, right on top. Just break it up. Try not to eat it all before it goes into the sundae. And a big dollop of whipped cream on top. Now, all I need is a big spoon and a big smile.
An apple cake is perfect on a day like this. It's nice and chilly. I'm peeling 1 pink lady and I have 2 green apples. The pink lady is nice and sweet. The Granny Smith is a little tart. It just works perfectly in this recipe. But any apples you have will work. All right, so I've got my apples peeled. Now I'm gonna core them, then dice. During my professional career in cooking, I have not always enjoyed baking. Kind of shied away from baking early on. I just thought it was a little intimidating, but I found that there were a lot of baking recipes that weren't as intimidating as I thought. This is one of those recipes. After I get these apples in a bowl, I'm gonna get started on my dry and my wet. I'm using 3 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, a ½ teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Apple and cinnamon go hand in hand. I'm grating up some nutmeg, give you that intense nutmeg flavor. I can already smell it. Put that to the side. Get started on my wet. A ½ cup of dark brown sugar. I want more of a molasses flavor, so I'm using dark. 2 cups of white sugar, granulated sugar. 1½ cups of canola oil or vegetable, as long as it's a neutral oil. Now this is a very dense and heavy cake, so that's why I'm using oil instead of using like room temp or whipped butter. So next I'm gonna add some vanilla, 2 teaspoons or 2 capfuls. 3 eggs into this bowl first because I don't want any shells in that cake. Mix that in there. Get my hand mixer on. I like baking oil-based cakes because if you let it sit out at room temp, it lasts for days and days. That cake stays moist forever. I'm gonna put the flour in a little bit at a time and give it a mix. Give it a mix. All right, that looks good. Fold in the apples. These are really big chunks. You're gonna get a big bite of apple in every slice. I have a bundt pan that I've buttered and floured. This is gonna help the cake come right on out once it cools. Now I'm just gonna evenly distribute the batter directly into this pan. Of course, bang it on a table because I wanna make sure there are no pockets of air. I want the cake to bake nice and evenly. So I have my oven preheated to 325. I'm gonna bake this for 60 to 75 minutes. It depends on your oven. I know this cake will be ready when I insert a little toothpick. Comes out clean. Ooh, that cinnamon, that apple. Oh my goodness. Oh, it is so pretty. I'm gonna get started on melting my caramel for the cake. So this pot, I have 11 ounces of caramel. I'm gonna add about a 1/4 cup of whole milk. That is definitely cool enough now. Pour it directly on my cake. It is gorgeous.
All I want is some caramel on it. Well, don't worry, we're gonna have caramel on a flatbread apple pizza. So I got the apples soaking in some water over here so they don't turn brown as I work painstakingly through all of this. Love to know where my guy Hunter is. Okay. All right, so we take the center out of this. Doesn't have to be perfect. Keep them from oxidizing. Get the pan heated up over here. And what I'm gonna do is saute these a little bit, soften them up. Got a little bit of lemon juice in there so they don't oxidize. Bring it over here. A couple tablespoons of butter. There we go. Now the apple's in. There we go. It's getting hot now. This will be great. I've got some pizza dough ready to go, and what we'll do is we'll blind bake some crust and then make this for this fantastic caramel apple flatbread. Okay, so let's just let these kind of sit here and cook up a bit, and we'll add some ingredients. Little apple liqueur. Smells awesome. Give this, watch out, it could flame up on you. Now, being that I was a flambe captain and all, there's actually a flame going on there. I know you can't see it right now. Add a little bit more for some awesome flavor. Excellent, burning off a little bit of the alcohol. Now we'll get some vanilla. Just a touch. A little bit of vanilla. A little cinnamon. There we go. Raisins. Oh, this will be killer on this. Remember, this is all gonna go on top of a pizza. Little lemon juice, gotta balance out some of the sweetness that we have because we're also gonna add some brown sugar. So there's the lemon juice. Brown sugar. Just a touch of that. We're gonna continue to sweat out more moisture out of those apples. You know how juicy an apple can be. So we're gonna sweat that out because we don't want it to go on top of the pizza and sog out. Okay. We'll turn the heat down a little bit, kind of let that work. If you don't wanna make the pizza dough, go to your favorite pizzeria. But the pizza dough is gonna work as the dessert for this. So we'll get a little bit of flour on here, and I'm gonna blind bake this. Kind of like you do a crust for a pie. Just a little pat, a little more flour. Not gonna go as thin as I normally do. You've seen me here on Big Bite go super, super thin on this. This is gonna be a little more dessert oriented, so we're gonna leave it a little bit thicker. A little more rustic. Okay. Make sure it slides around. Now we bring it over. This is only gonna par bake. So in, give it a little slide. There you go. Hunter is on dessert. That's the glory moment. Look how tall he's getting. Isn't this crazy? I'm gonna have to get some lifts, flip-flops with lifts. Okay, go ahead and hit it, Hunter. You know what to do. Hunter's working on this. He's gonna top it off with some of the carameled apples and the raisins.
Coming over.
Big rockin' 16-year-old. I'm happy to get him in the kitchen. Okay. Go ahead and give us a little scoop of ice cream. Shake us some powdered sugar. I know this is why you showed back up.
I used to think making caramel was so scary. I'd burn the sugar. You'd probably have to throw out the pan. I'm going to show you how I make my salted caramel nuts. And you know what? They're not scary at all. First, I'm going to pour 1/4 cup of water into a sauté pan. Add 1½ cups of sugar. Stir it with a fork until all the sugar is moistened. Then I'll cook that over medium-high heat until the sugar melts. Now, from this point on, don't stir the caramel, just swirl the pan and keep it going for 5 to 10 minutes until it turns a warm golden brown. I'll swirl the pan occasionally to ensure that the caramel cooks evenly and doesn't burn. And just a quick word of caution, it's really hot. Okay, this is looking good. So I'll take it off the heat, add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Don't be shocked, it'll bubble up violently and harden for a minute. But just swirl the pan and it will all come together. So that's the caramel. And now I'm gonna add the roasted nuts. What I did was I roasted 1 cup each of pecans, cashews, walnuts, and almonds. 350 degrees for 7 minutes, just until they become fragrant. You can really sort of smell them. Really brings out the flavor in the nuts. And now I'm just gonna toss it all together. Caramel's really hot, but you want the nuts completely coated in caramel. At this point, you want to work really fast, because if the caramel cools, you won't be able to spread them out on the sheet pan. It's important for the nuts to cool before you put them in, because you know when hot nuts have that kind of like mealy texture, you want them to be really crisp. Okay, 2 teaspoons of salt. This is kosher salt. If you're gonna make salted caramel nuts, it has to have salt in it. I'm just gonna toss it all together. Toss them really carefully. This smells so good. Okay, now I'm gonna put it on a sheet pan lined with parchment paper. Just dump the whole thing out. You have to do this really fast before it cools. Oh, just like get all the caramel from the pan. You don't want to leave any behind. And now, take 2 forks, just like 2 dinner forks, and just start separating. Just separate them so that it's all in one layer. And when it cools, it's gonna be like bark. You can just break it in pieces. This needs to cool completely. It's about 3 hours. Okay, 1 more salt to put on. Fleur de sel, 1 teaspoon. It's really just a very light kind of finishing salt, a little briny. Just give it that extra thing. And now I'm just gonna let that cool, and I have one already. Look how great it is. This one's completely cooled, and all you wanna do is just break it off.
For dessert, I'm gonna make individual caramel cakes, and I'm starting with the dry ingredients. 1.5 cups of flour, and then a teaspoon of baking soda. And then this is really easy. A teaspoon each of allspice, cinnamon, and nutmeg. This is actually a play on my grandma Inie's prune cakes. Best cake ever. I used to make prune cakes for Lad, and I didn't tell him there were prunes in it. He loved them, and once I told him there were prunes, he didn't care. I don't happen to have any prunes on hand, so I'm just gonna keep it plain. The cake itself is to die for, but just wait till you see the icing I make later. Wow. All right, I'm just gonna get these sifted together. Now I'll move on to the wet. I've got 3 eggs. I'm gonna add a cup of vegetable oil and a cup of sugar. I love this cake recipe because all of the ingredients are so simple to remember. I find that a lot with old recipes, the ones my grandma and great-grandma used to make. Okay, a splash of vanilla and a cup of buttermilk. And you know my trick with buttermilk? Sometimes I have it in the fridge, but more often than not, I don't. And when I don't, I'll fill it up just about to the top with regular milk, and then I'll drop in a little bit of vinegar, let it sit for 5 minutes, and then you have instant buttermilk. I don't know where I would be in my baking life if I didn't have that trick. I have used it so much. All right, that's it for the wet ingredients. Super simple. Now I'm gonna take the dry and just dump them right into the wet. And then I'll stir this around. You don't want to get the batter perfectly smooth. It should have a few lumps all throughout. That's the cake batter. Now, part of what's going to make these cakes so fun is I'm going to bake them in these cute little cast iron pans. I smeared a whole bunch of butter on the inside. And I'm going to fill them just about 3/4 full. I'm going to spoon some icing over the top of these after they bake. Now I've got to get them in the oven. They're going to bake at a pretty low temperature, 300 degrees. But they're going to bake for about 45 to 50 minutes. They'll be really moist and just barely done. I could probably just eat the icing with a spoon and call it a day. I'm going to add a cup of sugar to the saucepan and half a stick of butter, and then just a few more things. Half a cup of buttermilk. I'll drizzle in a tablespoon of corn syrup and some vanilla. Okay, I'm adding half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of baking soda. I'm gonna turn on the heat, and this is where the time and patience comes in. I've got to stir it around so that the butter melts, the sugar's gonna start to melt, and it needs to cook for about 7 minutes or so. Definitely do not leave the saucepan at this stage. And the secret to this is to pour this caramel icing all over the cakes right when they come out of the oven. And here we go. And if you play your cards right, the caramel icing will seep down into the edges.
So I've got my regular sugar here.
So granulated.
Gonna go into a pan. Use a bigger pot than you think you need, because this will bubble up. And then I'm just gonna add some water to it.
Ah.
And that's it.
What?
I'm just gonna babysit it until it starts to turn brown and thick.
You don't stir it?
No, you don't stand there and stir it, because that's when it crystallizes.
Ah.
So if you start to get crystals around the edge, you can wet a little pastry brush and go around it. You can add just a tiny bit of water, but just let
leave it
it
alone.
do its thing, all right?
Okay.
See how it's already turned into that dark, rich caramel color?
Wow.
And I did nothing. I just stood here and watched it. So now I've got some heavy cream.
This is the magic part.
This is where it comes in.
Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble.
Whisk, 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 whisk.
Like, who
and
did this
see
first?
how it
Who
bubbles
figured this
up?
out first?
I'm sure it was a mistake.
Yeah.
Right?
The thing
Just
fell
throw
into
some
the
cream
thing.
in
This
there.
is why you want to use a bigger pot than you think you need, because it bubbles right up.
Oh.
Ooh, now you're talking.
That's candy.
Could dip a little apple in there.
Oh, what's up? You said apple? Gotcha.
Oh, she's got some tiny pieces.
And I'm gonna put it right in.
Don't make me start slicing.
So the cream stopped it from cooking, you know.
It also gives it that luxurious cream.
Yes.
Yeah, that
Make-
nice rich.
Oh,
Look
good
at that.
Lord.
I mean,
Good Lord,
come
I
on.
don't. That's gotta cool.
I've got some cheesecake here.
Oh, babe.
And you know, you can just use a store-bought cheesecake, and nobody will know the wiser, because you've got this beautiful homemade caramel sauce going on.
Yeah,
That's a
Katie.
showstopper.
And you know how easy that was. So easy.
For dessert, I'm making a batch of salted caramel cheesecake squares. Of course, I have to start with dessert. It's the best part. I'm starting by making the crust. It's just a regular graham cracker crust, really tasty. I put in 2 sleeves of graham crackers, and I will add some pecans to give it a nice nutty flavor. And the lid goes on, and I'll pulse it just to break them up. To moisten up the crumbs, I've got a little melted butter, and I'll pulse it while it goes in. And for extra yumminess, a little splash of vanilla. Pulse it all in. Now this goes into a buttered pan. I lined it with foil just to make it easy for the squares to come out when they're done. I like a generous crust with my cheesecake, and this is exactly that. It's gonna be nice and thick. I wanna firm it into the bottom of the pan. The crust looks great, it's all packed in there. So now I'll start on the cheesecake filling. I have 3 blocks of cream cheese. It's been softening. And I'll add 1.5 cups of sugar and let this start mixing together. This is looking great. Now I have 4 eggs that I cracked into a pitcher, and I'll drop them in one at a time just to give each egg a chance to mix in. Okay, that's looking great. Now a splash of vanilla. And the last thing, and I'll just add it while the mixer is going, 1/2 cup of sour cream. This is a fantastic cheesecake recipe. I use it all the time. I'll turn up the mixer just to get it nice and smooth for a few seconds. That looks perfect. Can't promise I'm not gonna lick the bowl. It just looks too good. Get it all smoothed out into the corners. Look at this luscious mixture. The cheesecake goes into a 350-degree oven for about 45 to 50 minutes. And after that time, I'll turn off the oven and open the door for another 10 minutes. And after that, it goes into the fridge. All right, the cheesecake is baked and cooled. It looks amazing. And now it's time to pour on the caramel topping. I poured a can of sweetened condensed milk into a pan. This is the secret to foolproof caramel. Then added dark brown sugar, salted butter, some dark corn syrup, a little vanilla extract, and stirred the mixture until the butter had melted, the sugar had dissolved, and the whole thing had come to a boil. Then I attached a candy thermometer and boiled the caramel, stirring constantly until it reached 225 degrees. Then the heat went off. I let the sauce cool for about 5 minutes, and now I'll pour it all over the surface of the cheesecake. Oh boy, how good does this look? Now the pan goes back into the fridge, and then before I go to the building, I'll cut the cheesecake into squares and I'll sprinkle them with salt.
I'm gonna make a pumpkin flan, and it's kind of like a mashup of pumpkin pie and creme caramel. So I'm gonna start with 1 can of sweetened condensed milk, 1 can of evaporated milk, 1 can of pumpkin. Just make sure it's pumpkin puree, not pumpkin pie filling. They're completely different things, but they come in cans that look very similar. 1/2 cup of mascarpone. It's gonna make it nice and thick and rich. Just gonna whisk all these together. And when it's nice and smooth, I'm gonna add 4 extra large eggs. So 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And I have maple extract, which really kind of boosts the flavor of maple. 1/2 teaspoon, it's very, very strong. Make sure it's pure maple extract. Okay, 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, because of course you always have to have cinnamon with pumpkin. And 1/2. It smells so good. And 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. And the last thing is orange zest. And the zest has more flavor than the juice, so I always use it when I can. Just stir it in, and that's basically the custard. I'm just gonna pour it over the maple caramel that's already in the pan. It's just fantastic. Let me tell you how I made it. It's pretty straightforward. I put 3/4 cup of sugar in a small saucepan, poured in 1/3 cup of pure grade A maple syrup, 1/3 cup of water, brought them to a boil, swirling the pan to dissolve the sugar, and cook the caramel at a low boil without stirring for 8 minutes. When the mixture turned golden brown and registered 230 degrees on a candy thermometer, I turned the heat off, swirled in 1/2 teaspoon of fleur de sel, poured the caramel into the cake pan, and let it cool for 30 minutes. Okay, I'm just gonna pour this mixture on top, and I wanna do it kind of slowly so it doesn't mix in with the caramel. Okay. So now I'm gonna put it in a water bath, which is in a pan, and I'm gonna put water all the way around. Make sure you don't get any water into the flan. And what this does is make sure that the temperature around the custard never gets to be more than 212 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm just using the hottest tap water. Okay, ready for the oven. From here on, it's all about baking and chilling. I'll put the flan in the center of a 350-degree oven for 75 minutes. By then it should be firm, but still slightly jiggly in the middle. And when I put a knife in the center, it should come out clean. Remove the flan from the water bath and put it on a cooling rack. Then when it's completely cool, I'll cover it in plastic wrap and put it in the fridge for at least 3 hours. So the flan is chilled. And now the moment of high drama when I take it out of the pan. Okay, it's thoroughly chilled, which is great. I'm just gonna run a knife right around the outside. How good does this look? There it is, just like that. Whoa. And the caramel is just gonna go all the way around. I think it needs a little orange zest on top, don't you? It's so creamy and absolutely delicious. I don't know, I may have to skip the turkey and go directly to dessert. This is fabulous.
I am making my version of the pot de crème. That's French for a pot of cream. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing is heating up my cream. That's 2 cups of heavy cream that I'm gonna get to like a rolling boil. While that heats up, I am going to make a caramel sauce. All right, a 1/2 cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of water, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Whisk that together. Now, as this heats, that sugar is going to begin to brown, and I'm gonna keep a close eye on this because once this starts to melt and cook, you could run the risk of it burning and crystallizing on the sides. So that's why I have some water here and a pastry brush to kind of brush down the sides so it doesn't crystallize. And it's also important not to stir because that can introduce crystals in your pot. A pot de crème is basically a baked custard. If you've ever had a crème brûlée, it's very similar to that. Okay, I'm gonna swirl this around, making sure that I do not mix, and brush down the sides with a little bit of that water. And my brush, starting to smell that sugar melt. That sugar has caramelized. I'm gonna turn the heat off before it burns. I have my milk that I've heated here. I'm gonna add that heavy cream to the pot, slowly. You don't want it to bubble over. It's gonna be creamy and caramely. Has notes of like the molasses. That just smells so good. Okay, and now I'm gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla, about a capful. Mix it up, and I'm gonna go over here and make my custard. All right, so I have 4 egg yolks here, and I'm gonna beat this until it's pale in color. Just whipping some air into these egg yolks. This is gonna help give this cream some body. All right, so that is pale. It's kind of doubled in size. All right, so now I am going to slowly add my caramel cream into these eggs. Now I'm going to temper it, just add just a little bit in at a time because I don't want those eggs to scramble. Now I can pour the rest in. Oh, that smells so good. So I have a strainer here. I am going to run this through the strainer because I wanted to make sure that it's really smooth. Because sometimes when you add hot liquid to eggs, you'll get pieces of like cooked egg. So you just want to make sure that you don't have that. That's why it's always best to strain. See, there's a little stuff left over. Don't need that. Okay, I have 4 ramekins here, and I'm going to evenly pour my cream. I'm gonna bake this off and add a little hot water in there to create a water bath to make sure that these cook evenly. I could just drink this right out of this pitcher right now. All right, oven is at 325. Add that hot water to create that water bath. Okay, I'm gonna let that go for about 40 minutes or until it becomes firm. So my caramel pot de crème has cooled, and now I'm going to top it off with some caramel popcorn on top for a little texture. Is your mouth watering? Mine is too.
A few of my volleyball teammates are coming over today for a grill out and a pickup game, and they are gonna go crazy over my miso caramel cracker cookies. They're chewy and crunchy and salty and sweet. They are perfect for tailgating. I'm gonna start by melting some caramel in my pan. And to help soften it, I'm gonna also add 2 tablespoons of heavy cream. I'm just gonna let these melt and I'm gonna stir it around to get the heavy cream incorporated, and the heavy cream just softens the caramel a little bit. This smells delicious. My caramel is smooth and melted. I'm gonna add my miso paste now. I'm adding 1.5 tablespoons. A little bit goes a long way, and this is gonna add umami, which I like to think of as like 3-dimensional saltiness. It's so good. If you don't want to go out and get miso paste, you can certainly just add a few good pinches of salt to this caramel. But I love the little something extra that miso adds. Oh gosh, it smells so good. I'm really excited to eat these. All right, I'm going to set the caramel aside to cool slightly, and that'll help me form the sandwiches. So I'll pour it into my bowl. I have my pan lined with parchment, and the parchment is just to help prevent the caramel from sticking. And now I'll grab my crackers. And these treats are the best because they are no bake. They come together so easily. Now I'm gonna arrange my crackers all over my pan. And these salty crackers drive home that salty and sweet combination that I love so much. I am making 6 rows of 6. 36. Okay, now each of these is gonna get a dollop of caramel. I'm using my teaspoon, which will be the perfect amount. I wanna add the most amount of caramel without it going over the edge. And then I'm gonna tap it with a cracker. You are gonna be so tasty. Now I'm gonna melt my chocolate. I'm using dark chocolate here so that it's not overly sweet with the caramel, but you can pretty much use any chocolate that you want. And I'm gonna melt it in a double boiler, which is just a bowl set over a pot of boiling water. And I'm gonna stir it as it melts so that it's nice and smooth. This is melted and looking good. So I'm gonna remove it from the heat, and then I'll be ready to dip my cookies into it. I'm gonna dunk each of these halfway into the chocolate and then scrape off any excess and give them a few sprinkles. These are so simple and so good. These cracker cookies are dangerous to have around though, so I'm glad that I have friends coming over to help me eat them. Otherwise, I'll just eat this whole pan. Look how cute it is. Okay, I kind of want to taste this. My friends are gonna dig these.